Right, should we dive straight into this eternal battle of the titans? iPhone versus Android 2024-2025 edition.
Feels like it's been going on forever, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But, nowadays it's not just about comparing clock speeds or camera sensor sizes, is it?
Yeah.
It's the whole experience, how the thing actually feels to use day in, day out.
Totally agree. And while, the tech gurus get lost in spec sheets, for most of us, it really comes down to how well this gadget fits into our lives.
Exactly.
So in this deep dive, we're going to focus on why, looking at the market right now, the iPhone might actually be the better choice specifically for you.
Yes. And look, we know Android has its strengths. Tons of customization, phones at literally every price point imaginable. We get that.
Sure.
But we're kind of putting that to one side for today. Our mission is clear. Let's break down those key advantages that could make the iPhone the smarter pick for you. Think of it as answering that big question. Is jumping into the Apple ecosystem worth it?
And just to be clear, we're not saying Android is bad. Not at all. It's a powerful system.
No, definitely not.
But we're looking specifically at the areas where the iPhone consistently seems to shine. The benefits you might not have considered amidst all the, noise about new releases.
Couldn't have said it better. So what are these magical iPhone advantages we're dissecting today? Well, buckle up.
Okay.
We'll talk about the sheer simplicity and rock-solid consistency of iOS, how the Apple ecosystem works together like a well-conducted orchestra, the raw power and efficiency under the hood, that Fort Knox level security and privacy,
Always a big one.
the curated quality of the apps, updates that actually arrive on time, and maybe surprisingly, how it all adds up to some serious long-term value.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with point one. Simplicity and consistency.
Yeah, and what's interesting here is how fundamental these seemingly basic concepts are to the overall user experience. Apple has really bet the farm on making iOS simple and predictable.
Right.
Think about it. Even if you haven't picked up an iPhone in a few years, you could probably grab one and figure out the basics without too much hassle.
It's that it just works vibe, isn't it? Almost a cliche, but there's definitely something to it.
There really is.
You hand an iPhone to someone who's never used one, maybe even a kid, and they usually start swiping and tapping and figuring things out pretty quickly. Navigation feels intuitive. Settings aren't buried under 10 layers of obscure menus.
Yeah.
And the focus is really on what you're doing, looking at photos, sending a message, not wrestling with the phone itself.
Now contrast that with the Android world. The level of customization, while powerful, can be a double-edged sword, right?
Oh, for sure.
All those options can feel less like freedom and more like homework for some users.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to video call your grandma without wading through 10 different video chat apps with varying levels of user-friendliness.
Exactly.
FaceTime, for all its Apple-ness, kind of nails that simple, reliable experience for millions.
Absolutely. And it's not just about being easy to pick up initially. It's the consistency across their devices. And over time, that's impressive. You go from an iPhone to an iPad, maybe even an older one, and the app icons look familiar, the swipe gestures are the same, the basic logic holds up. It's like they created a design language, and they actually stick to it.
If we look at it more broadly, it's about minimizing what tech folks call cognitive load.
Right.
You don't have to constantly relearn how things work every time you switch devices or update your phone, and that consistency extends to the apps too. The App Store guidelines subtly nudge developers towards certain interface patterns, so apps tend to have a more similar feel, which is surprisingly important for overall usability.
Cognitive load, basically, the mental effort needed to use something. Good point.
Exactly.
Whereas with Android,
Well, Samsung's One UI looks and feels totally different from Google's Pixel UI, or what you might find on a One Plus.
completely different.
Even updates within the same brand sometimes feel like they've rearranged the furniture, and you're left wondering where they hid your favorite setting this time. It's like moving house, digitally. Nobody enjoys that. Precisely. That consistency isn't just a nice to have, it's a key reason people feel comfortable with iOS and often stay within that ecosystem. It minimizes the learning curve.
Yeah.
And we should also mention Apple's long-standing focus on accessibility. Analysts often point out that iOS offers a more comprehensive and better integrated suite of tools for users with disabilities.
True. We're talking about things like being able to really make the font size bigger if your eyesight isn't what it used to be, built-in screen readers that actually work well, hearing aid compatibility that isn't an afterthought, ways to control the phone if you have limited mobility, even features to help with motion sickness. It's a level of attention to detail that says a lot.
It really does.
Okay, simplicity and consistency check.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about that walled garden, the Apple ecosystem.
What's fascinating here is how Apple turned what some might see as a limitation being tied to their hardware and software into a significant advantage. Because they control the whole stack, from the silicon up to the apps, they can achieve a level of optimization and integration that's just harder to replicate consistently in the more open Android ecosystem. The walled garden, by the way, is just a metaphor for Apple's control over its hardware and software.
It's like they're the only ones playing all the instruments in the orchestra, so they can perfectly tune every note.
Good analogy.
Android, sure, it's gotten better with Google services tying things together, but you're still relying on different manufacturers playing nicely, which doesn't always guarantee harmony.
Exactly. Think about some of the key ecosystem features, handoff and continuity, for instance.
Yeah.
You start writing an email on your iPhone, walk over to your Mac, and boom, it's right there waiting for you. Or answering calls and texts on your iPad, even if it doesn't have its own cellular connection.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
And AirDrop. Man, AirDrop is one of those things where trying to quickly share a photo with someone nearby on another platform suddenly feels like stepping back into the Stone Age.
It really does.
A couple of taps, files are transferred, no fuss, no sketchy third-party apps needed.
The key is how seamless it feels. iCloud quietly syncs your photos, notes, passwords across all your devices, so you barely have to think about it.
Universal clipboard.
Copy on your Mac, paste on your iPhone. Yeah. AirPods magically switching between your phone and tablet depending on where the audio is coming from. It all just flows.
And if you have an Apple Watch, it's practically an extension of your iPhone.
Yeah, right.
Initial setup, getting notifications, tracking health data, it all funnels through your phone. Even little things like unlocking your Mac just by wearing your watch. These small conveniences add up.
They really do.
And let's not forget CarPlay, which for many people offers a more consistent and reliable in-car experience compared to Android Auto.
Right. It creates this sticky web of convenience. And then you add Apple's exclusive services on top, which act as real ecosystem anchors.
Like iMessage and FaceTime.
Exactly. They're so deeply integrated and feature-rich, especially with the huge number of Apple users in places like the US.
Yeah, those blue bubbles can be surprisingly persuasive.
They can.
End-to-end encryption, sending all sorts of cool effects and messages, knowing if someone's read your text or is typing. It's a whole communication world within iOS.
And FaceTime. Just tap a contact and you're video calling. High quality, super simple.
It just works.
And while RCS is eventually coming to iMessage, that's rich communication services, the modern messaging standard, the existing network effect, is massive.
Huge.
People are used to these features, their contacts are there. Switching to Android means losing that direct integration, potentially messing up group chats, or just having a less seamless experience. It's almost more of a social hurdle than a technical one sometimes.
That makes sense.
And don't forget Apple Pay, also tightly woven into the fabric of their devices. These aren't just extra apps, they're fundamental tools that make switching platforms feel like more of a hassle.
Okay, the ecosystem, definitely a powerful gravitational pull. Next up, performance and efficiency. This is where Apple's custom silicon really struts its stuff, right?
Absolutely. Year after year, iPhones tend to deliver benchmark-crushing performance, often outpacing Android phones with seemingly beefier specs on paper.
Yeah.
It comes back to Apple designing its own A-series chips, like the A18 Pro in the latest iPhones, specifically for iOS. So C, by the way, just means system on a chip. It integrates all the main components.
It's like a custom-tailored suit versus something off the rack.
Exactly. Android makers mostly rely on chips from Qualcomm or MediaTek, which have to cater to a much wider range of devices and software. Apple gets to fine-tune everything.
And the benchmark results bear that out. If you look at something like Geekbench 6, the A18 Pro generally smokes the current top-tier Android chips, like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, in both single-core and multi-core performance.
It's actually that single-core speed, which really impacts how snappy the phone feels in everyday tasks.
We're talking a pretty significant lead, like 45 to 57% better in some single-core tests.
Yeah.
Even multi-cores, generally ahead, though some upcoming Snapdragon chips might close that gap a bit. But it's not just about peak numbers, is it? It's how that power translates to real-world use.
Exactly right. iPhones often feel faster in daily use, even with less RAM than some Android competitors. iOS is just incredibly efficient with its resources because it's designed for specific hardware.
Right.
And when you push these phones hard, like with demanding games or video editing, the A18 Pro tends to show better sustained performance. It can maintain high frame rates for longer without overheating and throttling as much.
That sustained performance is key. Anyone who's tried to play a graphically intense game on a phone that gets super hot knows what we mean. Frame rates drop. The phone gets uncomfortable to hold.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
iPhones generally handle that much better. And let's not forget battery life. Despite sometimes having smaller battery capacities on paper, iPhones often last longer because of that hardware-software harmony.
Again, it's the optimization. iOS is very good at managing power. And as AI becomes more prevalent, Apple's A-series chips are also showing a leadership in AI performance benchmarks, especially for tasks done right on the device. Their approach seems to be about processing more AI features locally for privacy reasons, which requires powerful, efficient silicon.
Privacy and security, that's our next deep dive topic. And that walled garden approach comes back into play here again, doesn't it?
Absolutely. In today's world, security and privacy are top priorities for a lot of people, and this is an area where iOS consistently gets high marks.
Right.
The fact that it's a closed system running exclusively on Apple's own hardware makes it inherently harder to exploit.
Think of it like a very exclusive club with strict rules and one bouncer who knows everyone coming in and out.
Good analogy. Android, being open source and used by tons of different companies, just has a much larger potential attack surface. We even see higher rates of malware targeting Android.
Makes sense.
Then there's the App Store review process. Apple has a notoriously strict vetting system, often manually reviewing apps for malware, security flaws, and privacy violations before they're allowed in.
Compared to the Google Play Store, which is more automated, and the fact that Android lets you sideload apps from anywhere.
Right, completely bypassing any checks Google might have.
That's sideloading on Android, while it gives you freedom. It's kind of like leaving your front door wide open for any digital junk, isn't it?
It can be, yeah. And when it comes to updates, Apple is the clear winner. They roll out security updates simultaneously to all supported devices, and they support them for 5-6 years, sometimes even longer for critical patches.
Whereas the Android update situation is, well, let's be honest, it's still a bit of a mess.
It really is. Google releases the updates, but then each manufacturer, and sometimes even carriers, have to tweak and release them for their specific devices. This often leads to delays and shorter support lifespans, leaving many Android phones on older, less secure OS versions.
And it's not just software. iPhones also have strong hardware-level security, like Face ID and Touch ID, the secure enclave chip that locks down your sensitive data, and full disk encryption enabled by default.
While many Androids have similar features, the implementation can vary. The Secure Enclave, by the way, is a dedicated, isolated chip inside the iPhone, specifically for protecting your most critical info.
Gotcha.
What's interesting, too, is Apple's marketing and actual implementation of privacy features. App tracking transparency, where apps have to ask permission to track you online, was a pretty big deal.
Huge deal.
Their focus on on-device processing and their private cloud compute system for more complex AI tasks show a commitment to minimizing data collection. They also give you lots of granular control over app permissions and transparency with the App Privacy Report. Private cloud compute is Apple's system for handling complex AI tasks in a way that minimizes direct access to user data.
It's just a fundamentally different approach compared to Google, whose core business is built on data, right?
Pretty much.
While Google is making privacy improvements to Android, the underlying incentive is different. It feels a bit like the fox guarding the henhouse. No offense to any foxes listening.
Laughs, fair point. Though, it's worth noting, even the walled garden isn't impenetrable. Sophisticated attacks against iPhones do happen.
True.
And those restrictions can sometimes annoy really tech-savvy users who want more control.
Good caveat. No system is perfectly secure.
Right. But for the vast majority of users, iOS offers a more consistently secure and private experience right out of the box.
Okay, let's move into the world of apps. It's not just about how many apps you have, but what those apps are like, isn't it?
Exactly. While the Google Play Store might boast a larger total number of apps, the Apple App Store is generally regarded as having a higher average quality in terms of stability, security, and overall polish.
That stricter review process Apple has seems to pay off.
It seems so. You're less likely to run into sketchy apps, and the ones that are there often feel more refined and better optimized for the specific hardware and software.
Yeah, even cross-platform apps sometimes just run a bit smoother on iOS.
Anecdotally, yes. And that quality perception influences developers. Even though Android has a much larger global market share, the App Store consistently generates significantly more revenue.
Like billions more.
Yeah, billions. iOS users are simply more willing to pay for apps and in-app purchases.
Which is a massive incentive for developers, right? Especially those making premium apps and games. They often prioritize iOS.
Definitely. You frequently see new, high-quality apps launch on iOS first.
It makes strategic sense for them. They can often get a better return on their investment initially on iOS.
Plus, let's not forget Apple's own excellent first-party creative apps like GarageBand and iMovie. You don't really find direct pre-installed equivalents on most Android phones.
Good point. So while Android might have quantity, the App Store often feels like a more curated, higher quality experience, especially if you're willing to shell out a few bucks for premium software.
That sums it up pretty well.
Okay, now let's talk about something that really impacts the long-term ownership experience. How long these things last and what they're worth down the line.
Yes. This is where the iPhone really shines in terms of long-term value. Their track record on software update longevity is unmatched in the industry.
Seriously?
We're talking 5, 6, sometimes even more years of major iOS updates. That keeps the phone functional, secure, and compatible with the latest apps for a much longer time.
Which is a huge difference compared to the Android world, where even flagship phones might only get 2 or 3 years of major updates.
Yeah.
That rapid obsolescence can be a real drag, not to mention the security risk if you're stuck on an old version.
And that long-term software support directly translates into resale value. iPhones consistently hold their value much, much better than Android phones.
It's not even close sometimes.
The depreciation rate for iPhones is significantly lower, often about half the rate of flagship Android devices in just the first year.
The numbers are pretty stark.
Yeah.
After a year, an average flagship Android might lose about a third of its value, while an iPhone loses maybe around 17%.
And that gap widens over time. After a couple of years, an Android phone might be worth less than 40% of its original price, while the iPhone could still be around 65%.
Even comparing newer models like the iPhone 16 versus the Samsung Galaxy S24, the trend seems to hold. iPhones just depreciate slower.
Which has real financial implications. When you're ready to upgrade, you'll get a significantly better trade-in value for your old iPhone, making the new one a bit easier on the wallet.
And Apple's own trade-in program encourages that cycle, keeping people loyal.
It's a smart move on their part, fostering that brand loyalty. And it really changes the calculation when you think about the total cost of owning the phone over several years.
Right.
That higher initial price of an iPhone can be offset by its longevity and strong resale value. It's not just about the upfront cost, it's about the overall investment over the device's lifespan.
Well, there we have it. We've really dug into why, in 2024, 2025, the iPhone might just be the better choice for you. But as always, it boils down to what you value most.
Absolutely. Android definitely offers a lot, especially in terms of customization and hardware variety, no question.
For sure.
But the iPhone presents a very compelling package with its ease of use, that seamless ecosystem integration, consistently strong performance, robust security and privacy features, high app quality, reliable long-term updates, and surprisingly strong resale value.
So the final thought for you listening. Considering everything we've discussed, what aspects of your mobile experience matter most to you? And how well does your current or desired platform align with those needs in light of this deep dive? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Until next time.